Hello, friends of Tangled Hearts. Welcome to our channel, where stories of love and passion unfold. Let's begin our exciting journey into the world of human relationships. I told my wife Emily that my seminar ended a day earlier, but I couldn't change my flight. It meant I would return on Tuesday evening. She complained that I would have to be absent for another night, but said she would be glad to see me nonetheless. I thought about it for about an hour. I realized I had been away from home a lot and that I needed to think more about my wife, with whom I had spent 17 years. I went to the airport and tried to make one of those attempts to make things right. I was almost ready to give up when I realized there was a flight to the airport near my hometown. The airport I usually use and prefer is about an hour's drive north from where I live. The other airport was almost 2 hours drive south, and I had never used it before. I checked and found that a flight to this airport was leaving in half an hour, so I approached the counter to inquire if I could buy a ticket. I was amazed at how easy everything turned out to be. Within an hour, I was in the air, and within 3, I was on the ground. I could rent a car and be home by midnight. Emily should find a way to express her joy at my early return. I mentally made a list of assumptions and smiled to myself. I decided not to call her and make my appearance a complete surprise. It was just before midnight when I pulled up to our driveway. The house was dark, and Emily's car was missing. I wondered about it as I carried my bag into the house and unpacked my things. Where could she be at this hour? I decided not to be surprised. I called her on her mobile. She picked up on the third ring. "Hello," she murmured. Her voice sounded sleepy. "Hey, Em. It's me. Just thought I'd call and see how you're doing," I lied. "I'm fine, but it's well past midnight, Ron, and I was asleep," she replied. "I'll be at the airport tomorrow at 6 to pick you up. Don't worry." I must confess I was puzzled and more than a little curious to learn that she was sleeping, but not at home. "Where are you?" "I tried calling our landline, but it just went to voicemail," I told her. "Where do you think I am, silly?" "I'm in bed. Our phone isn't working. A technician is coming over tomorrow to fix it." "A few people told me the same," she yawned. "Just call me on my mobile if you need to reach me." My head was spinning. Was she upstairs in bed? I had unpacked my suitcase there and didn't see her. It seemed unlikely. She was blatantly lying to me. But why? "Hey, I won't be on the flight at 6, so don't bother coming for me," I warned. "Looks like we'll have to stay a few more days. I'll call you when I know for sure the time and day of my return." "Oh, darling. I'll miss you so much. Come home as soon as possible," she murmured. "I couldn't wait to see you." "I'll be in touch, dear. Sorry for waking you up. Sleep tight and dream of me," I concluded. "Definitely," she promised. Did I hear her chuckle as she hung up? I dialed the home phone number, and it rang normally. I had thought about answering the call and having a brilliant conversation with myself, but I didn't have the energy for it. I went up to our room and searched under the bed and anywhere else a person could hide. "Ladies and gentlemen, Elvis has left the building." I'm in sales, not rocket science, but my nose worked well. I smelled something rotten. How clueless was I? Pretty clueless, that was my honest answer to myself. The next morning, I got up early and moved the rented car to the other side of the street. Around 7 o'clock, I saw Emily's car pulling up to the house. There was a man with her. I hid in the clutter closet in the foyer and kept the door slightly ajar. Emily unlocked the door, and they entered. "I just want to change and get ready for work," she said to him. "I'll grab some clothes for tomorrow so we don't have to come back here tomorrow morning. I'll be back in 10 minutes. "I'd help you, but then I'd have to fuck you again," he chuckled. Then I'd have to fire you for being late. I don't think you'd fire me, Emily retorted sharply. You enjoy having me work under you too much. Even your wife thinks I'm the perfect secretary. What would you tell her? So, this was Emily's new boss. Yet she had considered him insufferable and arrogant. I even wondered what she would do if she liked the guy. He'd only been with the company for a couple of weeks, if memory serves. Quite the fast worker. I told her you're her mother's age and weigh 100 kilograms, her boss laughed. Even if she sees you, I'll still have to fire you. Then he added, I told her I'll be looking for a little house for myself this week. Now it seems I won't be straying far from the hotel for a couple of days. Emily returned to the room and chuckled. She looked stunning, and Mr. Boss, was his name Joe? Grabbed her and kissed her slowly, wetly. I had the temptation to grab an umbrella from the shelf and shove it up his rear end. Why don't you spend tomorrow evening with me, right here? We can go out for dinner and be back by 8. Maybe when we return, you'll be lucky enough to see the little house after chatting with its owner, Emily suggested. If you're interested, I can give you a tour of all the rooms. Want such a tour? And what if your husband comes home early? The boss asked. Jeff, you're so nervous. She chuckled. His name was Jeff. Ron will call to let me know so I can meet him at the airport. He'll give me a day's notice, so if he doesn't call today, he won't be home tomorrow. That's good enough, Jeff said to her. I wouldn't want some jealous husband trying to kill me. Ron's a sweetheart, Emily replied. He'd probably offer you a beer and apologize for leading me into your arms. To me, he's just a wimp, Jeff suggested. My wife would rip my balls off. I'd have Ron's balls if he ever cheated on me. Fear keeps you men in check, Emily added. Most of the time. Seems like you're not too afraid of your wife. Believe me, I'd be in deep shit, Jeff replied. I'd be lucky to save my life, let alone my balls. Luckily, she's in Houston, so I feel perfectly safe. That was all I heard as they walked out the door. My face was red, and my blood pressure must have been through the roof. Not only was she unfaithful, but my wife despised me. I sat and contemplated the situation. A plan began to take shape gradually. I remembered that Emily told me her new boss was being transferred from the company's headquarters in Houston. I needed to find out his name, so I made a few phone calls. A few silly questions to Emily's office secretary quickly provided me with all the necessary information. His name was Jeffrey Ross, he had a wife, and 2 teenage children. She stayed in Texas with the kids until the end of the school year, and then they would join Jeffrey here in Springfield. He was house hunting every evening after work. I searched the Ross surname in Houston on the internet directory and found 3 Jeffrey Rosses in Houston. With the first call, I hit the jackpot. Mrs. Ross? Mrs. Jeffrey Ross? I asked. Yes, I am Mrs. Jeffrey Ross. How may I help you? She replied. Your husband works at Halifax Company? I asked. Yes, he does, she replied. This is Don Watson from Halifax, I lied. We're planning a small party for your husband, Jeffrey, and you. We'll provide you with round-trip tickets to Springfield. It'll be a surprise for Jeffrey. Can you make it? I couldn't help but think what a jerk I was, but all's fair in love and war. And I was at war. I can ask my sister to look after the kids, she replied. That sounds very sweet. When is this little scheme planned? I almost answered her question directly, but I held my tongue. Tomorrow evening. You need to catch flight 1435 with American Airlines. Just charge it to your card, and the company will reimburse Jeff with a check, I told her. We'll arrange for someone to meet you at the airport. The flight arrives at 5 in the evening, and the party starts at 8, so you should have plenty of time. Don't forget to keep this a secret, okay? She promised not to tell anyone, and I ended the conversation. Then I started calling Emily's friends and relatives to invite them to the surprise party for Emily. I told them she got a promotion from her boss, and I thought it was a reason to celebrate. It seemed like everyone was satisfied with this explanation and the need to keep it a secret from Emily. I asked them to be at our house by 7 to ensure Emily would come. I didn't want to be a bad host, so I called a local restaurant and ordered food and drinks for the next evening. I explained that everything should be set up on the patio next to the living room, by our pool. Emily always wanted to throw a good party on that patio, I thought. She should like this. I left them instructions and told them the house might be empty when they arrived, but they could bring everything to the open patio by going around the house. The next day, I arrived at the airport half an hour early. As passengers were entering the baggage area, I asked a couple of single women if they were Mrs. Ross. When I asked one of the women, I heard a voice directed at me. "Hello. I'm Mrs. Ross," she declared. "Are you here to pick me up?" I was almost speechless when I saw her. She had the appearance of a movie star. I had to try twice before I could respond. My wife was an attractive woman, but this woman was the golden standard. "My name is Ron, and I've come to pick you up. My wife works for your husband," I explained. "Has he ever mentioned Emily?" Yes, he has, but I thought she would be a bit older," she replied. Damn. That idiot really told his wife that Emily was old and fat. I had to think fast. She seemed a bit suspicious. I'm often told that I married an older and larger woman. I tell everyone that she just has more experience, and her more can be loved, I offered my version. She seemed to ponder for a moment, then smiled. I dodged that bullet. We gathered her bags and headed to the parking lot. It was 6:30 when we arrived at my house. I explained to Mrs. Ross that it was an outdoor party in honor of her husband, as well as in celebration of my wife's birthday, as guests began to arrive. The supplier finished setting everything up, and I was impressed. It looked like a first-class party. I didn't know it could be done so easily. By 7:30, everyone I invited was there. I asked them to park behind the church half a block away from us so that our driveway would be clear. I explained to everyone that I would hide in the living room, and when the honored guests arrived at the house, I would turn off the lights on the terrace. That would be a signal for them to behave very quietly. We had sliding glass doors leading to the patio and vertical blinds that could be opened simply by pulling a cord about 10 centimeters. There was also a cord to raise the blinds. There were also heavier curtains that we pulled across the doors in cold weather. They were large enough for me to hide behind, reach the cords of the vertical blinds, and the porch light switch. A few minutes before 8, I saw Emily's car pulling up to the house. I turned off the light on the deck and hid behind the curtains. Everything became very quiet. The door opened, and Emily and Jeff laughed. It was nice to know they were having a good time. I thought we'd never make it here. He pulled Emily's dress over her head, revealing her, with only thongs on her, and nothing else. She laughed, sliding them off her cute round butt. Jeff pushed her onto my armchair and unzipped himself. It was the moment I decided to carefully open the blinds on the veranda. It was dark outside, and the room was lit, so no one inside the house could see anything outside, and Emily and Jeff weren't looking anywhere else. But those on the veranda undoubtedly watched as Jeff vigorously and quickly rammed Emily. By this time, I had moved to a chair to the side and calmly observed what was happening. She noticed that I was sitting there watching them. And she almost choked. Emily made some noises, but nothing could be made out. Her eyes were wide as saucers as she looked at me. Finally she managed to push him away. Her face was soiled as she looked at me. What are you doing here? She demanded an answer. I was a little disappointed by such a banal question. Perhaps the surprise had stunned her brain. This is my house, Emily. My name is on the deed, I replied. I didn't think you'd be home for a few more days. She exclaimed. It's quite obvious, I replied dispassionately. I should be going, muttered Jeff. I have things to do. Can I offer you a beer or something else? I asked. Both Jeff and Emily were taken aback by my offer. I saw Jeff considering that Emily was right to assume I'd offer him a beer if I caught them together. I smiled to myself, observing his thought process. Before Jeff could respond, his wife burst into the room from the veranda. She was holding a large purse and waving it vigorously. Jeff was so surprised to see her that he didn't even move to defend himself. I think he landed about 5 feet from where he had been standing. Following her into the room were Emily's mother and sister. Emily was still naked. Get dressed, Emily, you're a harlot. Her mother snapped, lifting Emily's dress and handing it to her. And wipe your face, dear sister, added Joan, Emily's sister. It was quite the performance you put on for all of us. You should consider a career in movie. Emily was too stunned to speak. I turned on the lights on the veranda, and she saw about 20 more people watching her. I went out and started filling a plate with potato salad and chicken wings. Then I grabbed a beer from the fridge and went back into the house. I sat down to eat and watched as Jeff tried to sit down, and Emily struggled to regain her composure. I had to admit, it was all damn unpleasant. As I chewed on a chicken wing, it occurred to me that I didn't create this mess. Emily and Jeff had put themselves, and those who loved them, in such a complicated situation. Ultimately, it was better for everyone to know the truth. It was good to know what the crap was and move on. In the end, everything settled down. Emily's cousin drove Mrs. Ross to a motel. Another cousin helped Jeff to his car and drove him to the motel. Emily's mother asked her if she wanted to go with her, but Emily refused. I know you're probably upset, her mother said to me. And Emily really deserves a beating, but I think she's suffering enough as it is. Then they left. Emily disappeared into the bathroom, and I heard the shower running. I had never enjoyed beer and wings so much, sitting alone and recalling the events of the evening. Once or twice in a lifetime, the planets align perfectly, and the plan actually works. After I finished all of my salad and wings, I began to tidy up. Cleaning up after that crowd took quite a bit of time. I needed to wrap up the leftovers and put them in the fridge and freezer. It was already midnight and I sat down at the table with one last beer for the night and relaxed. Emily entered the room and sat across from me. I hope you're happy. You did everything possible to ruin my life tonight, she complained. Even my own family thinks of me as some worthless harlot. Is that what you wanted? Emily, why would they even start to think that? Did I do anything to give them that impression? Maybe it was you. I asked. The only reason I can think of for such an opinion to form is when they catch you, boss, bent over our furniture. Does any sane person really think that's how harlot? If you thought we had a problem, you could have come to me instead of inviting the whole damn neighborhood over. She hissed. Do we have a problem? I smirked. You mean if we had a problem, you'd discuss it with me before sleeping with some idiot? I never wanted to hurt you, Ron. I never thought you'd find out about any of this, Emily reasoned. You're deliberately causing me pain. So inviting people over to my house for a little surprise party for my loving wife is worse than sleeping with someone outside of marriage? I asked. I don't think many would agree with that. Then she said what I had been waiting to hear for so long. If you had been around more often, this would never have happened, Emily reasoned. You didn't give me enough attention, and I fell for Jeff's trick. I was so lonely and vulnerable. I laughed heartily. She was such a foolish bitch. She was actually trying to blame me and make me apologize for bringing her into the arms of another man. I felt deep satisfaction as I closed the bedroom door behind me and locked it. My shackles were removed. I was emotionally free. And soon, I would be legally free too. I eagerly awaited my new life. As we conclude our journey into the world of human relationships, please remember to subscribe, like, and share our content. Thank you for your support, and we look forward to seeing you in the next story.